Thank you for joining me. I want to do something a little bit different today and something that's going to be fairly rare because I'm not going to be selling a whole lot of stocks. I'm more looking to buy things that I can hold for several years. But obviously, we're always looking for things that fundamentally change the company and its valuation. And obviously, when a stock gets to a price or above a price that we think it's going to go fairly long term, then it's probably better to get out and look at something else to buy. Or rather, every day you're looking at your portfolio, you should decide if you had the money today, would you be buying that stock today? And so for AMD, I don't think I'd be buying it today. Actually, I'm fairly sure I wouldn't. Because of fundamental things that have happened over the past few months and probably, I would say, 9-ish months. So, first, the basics. We have a PE of 136, and that is not a typo. So, generally, we're looking at companies with a PE of about 20. 20 is a really good number. Higher than that is probably less good. But depending on whether or not the stock is seeing a lot of growth and things, PE above 20 might be okay. I don't think that I'll be buying a whole lot of stocks that have a PE of over 100. Now, obviously, I'm buying Tesla, which has a PE of infinite because they don't make profit. But that's a whole different story for a whole different day. So we have a dividend of 0, and I would assume it's going to stay there for the foreseeable future. Depending on whether or not they're going to be profitable over the long term and grow their revenues and profits over the long term, I would assume that they're going to start paying a dividend again at some point. But I don't see that happening in the next few years. So the price to sales ratio is 5.5, which means they have $5 billion of $6 billion of revenues with or rather their earnings or their revenue per share is about $6. So stock price at $33, so we have a price to sales ratio of 5.5, which means if their profit was 100% of sales, we would have a reasonable PE. We would have a great PE, but that's pretty hard to do, especially for a company that manufactures things. So there's that. So we have a year-over-year growth of minus 80%. That's profit, obviously, but I think that they were hit really hard with the downturn of Ethereum and other cryptocurrencies because the mining of those cryptocurrencies is not currently as profitable as it was at the end of 2017. So obviously that's going to hurt them because they had the best mining graphics cards for a long time. So they're finally competitive in CPUs. So in the PC market and in the server market, actually, they're actually competitive with Intel right now. That's a really good sign, and it's going to be really good long term. I honestly see the server market really growing for AMD, but I don't see them growing enough to make this stock a better stock than something else, say a Tesla, for example, or even a Ford has a really good dividend. So I would even buy a Ford over an AMD right now. But the long-term outlook has turned very positive, but I think that's factored into the stock price at this point. Their graphics cards are also competitive, They don't have a truly high-end graphics cards that compare favorably to the NVIDIA 2080 Ti's. I think they could do more to reach that market segment, even though it's obviously not a big segment. You don't really need to compete in a segment that's for extremely high-end people. So I don't see NVIDIA selling a lot of 2080 Ti's. So the market share there is really low. So I don't know if they have to compete in that segment. But it seems like they would do fairly well to actually have a product that's positioned in that segment, because there's a lot of things that AMD has that NVIDIA does not. And a lot of people would like to buy an AMD graphics card in that segment, but there's just none available. So you have to go with NVIDIA. And a lot of that analysis comes back to the mining graphics cards, where AMD was the better graphics cards with the better computing power per watt, but the really high-end segment was just not there for AMD. So people would buy a NVIDIA 1060, 1070, 1080 for mining, and there was just nothing else that AMD could produce. So that's that for the analysis of the long-term outlook for AMD. There's also the thing that there's not going to be a new PlayStation this year. There's not going to be a new Xbox this year. And those two things, obviously big growth factors for AMD, because they had chips in both of them. So it didn't matter whether or not you bought an Xbox or a PlayStation, AMD was making money off of that. And both of them not coming out this year, probably coming out next year, obviously also puts a damper on things. I'm not sure if it's really going to be a great growth factor for them next year, but that's obviously something that I'm not going to evaluate right now. It's just that it might help them long term, fairly long term, but I'm just not sure if the growth potential is there, even with all that included. So in conclusion, we have a PE of 136, with the stock going up about 80% year over year. And for me, that just means it's time to get out. I bought the stock at $90.08 on October 25th, I believe. And so I didn't think it would go this high. I was hoping it would go, 25, maybe 30. But with a year-over-year growth of negative 80% and everything that I mentioned, it's just not the stock for me today. So I'll be selling my AMD shares and buying something else. I'll make a video about what I'm buying. Make sure to subscribe if you like this video. I'm coming out with more videos every day before market open. I hope you have a successful day.